meeting of the Chagrin Falls Board of Education. Mrs. Bruno, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. Garvey?
Here.
Mrs. Burrows is absent. Mr. Kanziger?
I'm here.
Mrs. O'Toole?
Here.
Mr. Reagan?
Here.
Will you please join me as we stand and face the flag for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At every regular meeting of the school board, we invite public comment. If there's anyone here tonight who would like to address the board who's not already notified me in advance, would you please raise your hand? Seeing none, we will proceed with the agenda. At this time, we're going to share board committee updates. If you would please provide a summary of your last meeting and what is pending, or just say no report if there's been no activity since the last meeting. The audit committee, Mrs. O'Toole.
No report.
The board policy committee, Mrs. Burrows is absent. The business advisory committee, Mr. Rankin.
No report.
The capital planning committee. So the board capital planning committee held a 3-hour joint meeting with the superintendent's facility master planning committee and the board finance and budget committee on October 22nd. Mrs. Bruno presented an overview of how facility project financing impacts our 5-year forecast. Mr. Wifter reviewed the recommended facility maintenance projects over the next 5 years, which amount to about $2 million in projects per year just for maintenance and repair. Finally, the entire group reviewed the preliminary facility master planning projects and costs over the next 10 years to examine the impact on our finances and our debt capacity. The next step is for the Facility Master Planning Committee to finalize its report and prioritized recommendations, which I believe is happening at the end of this week. Meanwhile, the Board Capital Planning Committee will finalize its report, which is the Facility Improvement Plan, or the FIP, it's also known as, which will recommend facility projects over the next 5 years to be incorporated into the 5-year forecast. All of these will then be presented to the board at the November 20th meeting, along with the 5-year forecast from Mrs. Bruno. So that meeting is going to be an important one for discussing which facility projects we need to undertake and how we will pay for them. The Board Finance and Budget Committee, I think I just gave your update. And there's no report from records retention. At this point, I'll turn the meeting over to Mr. Hunt for Superintendent's Reports.
Thank you. Good evening. I have 2 just brief reports this evening. We did earlier in the year provide the Board of Education with an overview of academic achievement data. The ACT data that was shared at that time was actually a year old because the 5-year trend and those results they're released in usually early September, but then are embargoed, so we can't share them publicly for a month. So we can legally share them with you now. I did want to put them on publicly tonight because there's certainly a lot to be celebrated here. This is the first time our composite score in my, 16 years here in the school district as an average has gone over 27, and I think that's a reflection of a lot of things that we've done in the district, and certainly a reflection of our staff and the work that they're doing with kids. So
Can you pause just for 1 second?
Sure.
Would you mind if we turn the camera to the screen so
Sure.
the audience can see the results?
So among some of that work, we, not only in classrooms throughout the district, but we did make a decision to go ahead and introduce the SAT suite of assessments. We've been working with those, PSAT 8-9, PSAT 10, and we've encouraged students to take the new maths as well. And I think that, in part with what's going on in classrooms throughout the district, is trending and driving these scores in certainly a very positive direction. So I just wanted to take a minute to share that with the school board this evening. This data will be kind of shared with, we bring academic data back around, certainly can pause and answer any questions that you might have. But again, I think just an opportunity to celebrate the work of our staff.
I think it's interesting to note that not only did our average grow over the last 5 years, the state average has declined. So that's even more significant. And then I wonder, I know the SAT renorms every once in a while. Does ACT renorm?
I don't believe so. I don't believe so. And again, we don't kind of invest in one piece of data. I mean, this is kind of a comprehensive view, and with this just coming out, I thought we would share it this evening.
Be interested to see, I know we asked this question when we were reviewing whether the district should give the SAT or the ACT, the number of students that take both tests. Maybe that's something we could look at in the future. Which one seems to be more popular
Sure.
with our students, or are they about equivalent?
Well, the SAT, we give it to everybody, so,
Right.
right.
Yeah, I wonder
So
if there's
that
a
would
way to know. Right.
Yeah, and that decision was
Mandatory
more,
for each one.
you know, I mean, there's a lot that plays into that around the SAT suite in terms of the data that it produces. You
Right,
know, so
right.
the
We've invested
potential-
in that,
Yeah.
and it's not that we would be moving away from it, but certainly some students seem to prefer one test over the
Sure.
other. So you're right, it wouldn't be a very meaningful analysis. But maybe that's why the number's down a little bit. It seems like the number taking a test is declining
Yeah,
a
but
little
we also,
bit.
it depends on the
Enrollment.
class size.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
enrollment.
yeah.
It's not that significant, you know.
Yeah, do you know, Bob, it looks like, I mean, obviously in between 17 and 18, the number of pupils that took it in the state jumped quite a bit. I mean, the numbers have been steady 18, 19, and they were pretty steady 15 through 17, but, you know, they jumped like 30,000 in between the two, which is the same time that the whole state dropped like 2 points.
Yeah, so the,
You know, there's something,
yeah, so the state mandated that you needed to give either the ACT or the SAT in the high school. So that's the huge probably jump in population, the number of test takers. And I would just assume when you push more kids in it, that's probably going to bring lower your trend down. So again, you'll see this come back around when we kind of update you with mid-year benchmarking data as well, but wanted to take this opportunity to congratulate the staff on this accomplishment.
it's great.
Are numbers posted from your districts?
I don't have that information. Again, this just was released and became.
Would something, is that something our districts would post or something that would be public?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly can do, often Becky will do, they create a spreadsheet and they share it within their groups and people populate that. So I'll ask her if that's actually going on and certainly can share that data as well. Then item B, I just wanted to update the board. We've had 2 meetings with the design team of Destination 2023. We've had, just as a reminder, we've got about 50 members to that group. There's members of our staff, there's students that have been, just wonderful in terms of their contributions, parents, and community members from really all stakeholder groups. So first meeting really talked about beliefs. Last meeting we started to dive into the core competencies and the profile of the learner. The next meeting we'll narrow that down and we'll kind of start to define those things. We hope to have that work done right at the beginning of January, and at that point we would start focus grouping, and one of those would be with the Board of Education where we come and we talk about that, and we also do a SWOT analysis just on strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats going forward as we kind of then phase into the more detailed part of the planning process. So I've shared some of that within the board report. Also let you know there's a link off our webpage where we're putting all that information out there so you can certainly follow along as that goes. I know, Greg, you've been in a few meetings, so I don't know if there's any comments.
No, it seems like it's a good, interesting process. I think the next meeting is going to be where we're really going to find out.
Starts to come
I think there's going to be a lot more discussion and a lot more debate.
Yeah.
The one's more brainstorming, the first two, and then the next one's going to be more of what do we actually believe. So it should be the most entertaining meeting next month.
Yeah, in case we wanted to know. The belief statements were quite long. I was surprised to have like
Sure.
3 pages of, is there an intent to then focus them in a little bit more?
Yeah,
Or
so
it
we-
seems a little unwieldy.
Yeah, and a lot of those things really felt in the competency bucket. It was kind of by design to create this long list and then start to talk about competencies. We're going to come back and you're going to cross off kind of what you've pulled out and then really narrow it in on belief statements. There's a lot in there that really didn't fall under
Right.
traditional belief statements.
Right, okay. And then will the members of the strategic planning be also indicated on the website, so just people will know who's involved?
Yeah, I don't think we've done that, but it certainly can.
Okay.
And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion for consent agenda items 6A through 6M?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Rankin, seconded by Mrs. O'Toole. Is there any discussion on these? Mrs. Brugner, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. Garvey?
Yes?
Mr. Kanziger?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole?
Yes.
Mr. Rankin?
Yes.
Now we're going to, can I have a motion please for Superintendent's Recommendation 7A?
So moved.
And a second?
Second?
Moved by Mrs. O'Toole, seconded by Mr. Kanzinger. Mr. Hunt?
Just A?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Go one at a time.
Yeah, so item A is just the approval of Amy Harker as a credentialed OTES evaluator. She's working with Mrs. Reed on supporting a teacher, so we wanted to get her board approved. That's to align with Ohio Res Code.
Any questions or discussion? Okay, Mrs. Brugner, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. Garvey?
Yes?
Mr. Kanziger?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole?
Yes.
Mr. Rankin?
Yes.
Can I please have a motion for Superintendent's Recommendation 7B?
So moved.
And a second?
Second?
Moved by Mr. Rankin, seconded by Mr. Kanzinger. Mr. Hunt?
B and C will have the same explanation. These are staff members that are involved in the Destination 2023 design team meeting, so we certainly appreciate their time, and this is just a recommendation to provide them some compensation for that time.
Okay. Mrs. Brugner, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. Garvey?
Yes?
Mr. Kanziger?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole?
Yes.
Mr. Rankin?
Yes.
And may I have a recommendation for 7C?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Moved by Mr. Rankin, seconded by Mr. Kanzinger. I assume we can skip the discussion and go right to roll call. Mrs. Brugner?
Mrs. Garvey?
Yes?
Mr. Kanziger?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole?
Yes.
Mr. Rankin?
Yes.
Can I have a recommendation for superintendent's, I'm sorry, can I have a motion for superintendent's recommendation 7D?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Moved by Mrs. O'Toole, seconded by Mr. Rankin. Mr. Hunt?
This is the approval of tech interns. These individuals support and help the technology department after school. We're both students in our high school. I apologize, this recommendation should come in early August, so I'm asking for retroactive approval as they have put hours in.
Any questions or discussion? Okay, Mrs. Brugner, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Garvey?
Yes?
Mr. Kanziger?
I abstain.
Mrs. O'Toole?
Yes.
Mr. Rankin?
Yes.
And a motion for superintendent's recommendation 7E.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Rankin, seconded by Mrs. O'Toole. Mr. Hunt?
So probably the easiest of the change order approvals that will have the entire building project. So we're kind of really, I guess, funneling down to what's left hanging out there. This is a series of change order resolutions, 58, 59, 60, and you're authorizing a credit back to the district of $353,000 to the bond account.
It's nice. Can we have another one of those at the next meeting?
As long as they'll send them over, we'll take them.
Any discussion or questions? I just want to clarify, Mrs. Brugner, maybe you can let us know, there are still some things hanging out there.
There are pay-ups that will come. Yeah, this is, these are change orders that are going to be then applied to those pay-ups, so the net effect will still be, we have not stopped paying them. We do still have to pay them,
Okay.
but this will be subtracted off what we have to pay.
Okay, great. And you're doing an analysis right now that kind of
Yeah,
bring
I
everything
have
together.
a phone call tomorrow with Carrie and Michelle from Gilbane to really go through and fine tune what they've got left so that I can take the number that's going to be left on the final. They're going to do the September and October payout together,
Mhm.
and we're going to go through that number and really get that in a more solid state.
Okay, so getting down to the final
Yeah.
numbers, which is
So,
great. Thank
just
you.
in case you're hearing anything, we do have an allowance left out there regarding the auditorium. We knew this kind of during the construction process, that there was potential moisture in one of the walls. There's some paint that's peeling in one corner of the auditorium currently. So there's some money left there to address and resolve that issue. There's been way too many emails about types of primer and scraping and strategy to attack it, but it's out there in case somebody does say, we see, peeling paint.
Mhm.
We're aware of it, addressing it. We're just kind of making sure we've got the right solution to the problem.
Okay. Mrs. Bruno, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. Garvey,
Yes?
Mr. Kanziger,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole,
Yes.
Mr. Rankin.
Yes.
Can I have a motion for Treasurer's Recommendation 8A
So moved.
and a second?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Kanziger, seconded by Mrs. O'Toole. Mrs.
You
Bruno?
don't want to do A and B?
I was just going to separate them out. Mrs. Bruno, would you like to provide any background?
I will, it's just taking me a little bit longer than normal because I had it all set to
Because I changed the web on
change it
you.
up a little bit, okay. So these are then and now certificates. It does seem like a lot. I'm not gonna go through every individual one. I know you've had it for a week, I'm not gonna just read it to you, you've already read it. Part of the reason for some of these is they were items that were kind of carried over, and then in the transition from one person in a position to another person in the position, the POs just kind of got dropped. It wasn't that they didn't know about the services or anything like that. Some of them were services that happened over the summer. The ESCs, we don't always get invoices immediately from them. Sometimes it takes a little while. So some of these maybe had been on a previous purchase order that had money on it, it then got closed. We had to open new ones. Part of the reason for this as well is we are moving away from doing large POs that are multi-vendor. So the practice for some departments and some purchases used to be just to put one giant PO out there at the beginning of the year and have it be a multi-vendor, and then as invoices came in, then they would charge those. We have tried to eliminate that practice and really get our purchase orders to specific vendors for specific services for specific amounts. And it's just taking a little while to get there. So some of these I think kind of fell through the cracks there. So we are implementing an additional form for the staff so that they understand, because right now some of these then and nows, what you see on the board is only the $3,000 and over. There are several that are a lot lower. And those really just come through the system, and I get a flag in the system, and then I mark them now, I sign the certificate, and I move on. So the purchaser may not even know that there's an issue. So if they're never told not to do that, they don't necessarily learn, and they don't know, and it's not really their fault. So I do have a new form I'm going to start sending to staff for these, and hopefully that will sort of knock this number down a little bit in the future.
So whenever the invoice occurs before the purchase order.
Right. Yeah, anytime the invoice date is before the purchase order, it's, and part of the issue too is, we've changed the system for getting POs. People aren't really used to the fact that it only takes a day or two. So, if they're used to something that used to take 2 weeks because it was paper and it was, the paper was shuffling around from person to person for the approvals, they were used to, well, I have a requisition number, I've got, maybe my principal's approval, I'm going to place the order. And they placed it before the purchase order was actually in place. And, a lot of times that is completely understandable when it takes 2 weeks to get something. But with the new system, I think we've really sped up the process, and it's not necessary. So hopefully, as we just continue to move and continue to tighten the controls on the purchasing, I think we'll get there.
In general, are you happy with how the paperless purchase order?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, and I think everybody else is too. I haven't had, there have been a couple little bugs that we've had to work out, but I think everybody, the feedback I've gotten has been very positive.
Any other discussion or questions? Mrs. Bruno, would you take the floor?
Mrs. Garvey?
Yes.
Mr. Kinzinger?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole?
Yes.
Mr. Rankin?
Yes.
Can I have a motion for Treasurer's Recommendation, at the number, what are we at, 8B?
Yep.
So moved.
And second?
Second.
Moved by Mrs. O'Toole, seconded by Mr. Kanzinger. Mrs. Bruno?
Okay, this is donations. We have several this month. We have the class of 2016 donated money to purchase a tree in memory of Thomas Graves. Ray Barkowski donated a $1,500 snow blower and a $250 backpack blower. Asylum Glass Works donated $250 to the wrestling program. Christine and William Partain donated $250 to the wrestling program. Sapphire Creek donated $600 to the wrestling program. David, and forgive me,
Boysenberry.
thank you, donated $500 to the wrestling program. Goodrich Orthodontics donated $300 to the basketball program, and Bell Street Marathon donated $400 to the basketball program. Recommending approval of those donations.
Where's the tree gonna go?
I would have to ask
I
Chris.
happen to know if you want to know. I think it's already planted.
Yeah, I do believe they did it.
I just didn't know where, out, like on your way into the drive on, like, right outside the athletic field.
Oh, okay,
Just
good.
past the main, the
parking
sign.
Yeah.
Does it have a plaque or a stone?
It's going to, yeah.
Okay. And the class has been notified of the gift?
We have.
Okay, great. And I'm curious about all of the donations for sports.
So we're moving into the winter season.
Mhm.
So I know wrestling specifically, they're buying new warm-ups, and that's what they'll be used for. I don't have specifics on basketball. It would not surprise me if those are annual donations used for the same thing.
Any other discussion? Mrs. Bruno, would you take the roll?
Mrs. Garvey.
Yes.
Mr. Kinziger.
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole.
Yes.
Mr. Rankin.
Yes.
Does anyone have any other business that they would like to introduce?
I would like to ask about calendar for 2020-21. Do we know when that's coming? There's this one mom who every year contacts me, she needs to
Well, I've
give
been waiting on the
her
union
dates to
president.
work for November 15th, for her days off, and
I'm waiting on the union president, I'm kidding. We have the 3 options completed. I have an email, it's in my court, that will probably go out tomorrow to staff for the voting, and you'll have a first reading by the next meeting.
okay. Would I be able to like see a draft before, I mean, this woman wants
Yeah,
to answer by
I'll put all
15th.
three.
And
I'll put all-
she knows it's not final.
Yeah, I'll
and
put all
that.
3 options in the
Okay,
board report for you on Friday.
Okay,
And we have talked about, and as soon as we're done with this fund, we're going to move right in and do the following school year, so we're a year ahead.
okay.
Next year, a lot of the holidays are on weekends, so it's gonna,
This will be an interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, we have a few different calendars.
yeah. Okay. Well, hopefully it makes it easier for everybody. Okay, so any other business? Then our next meeting is going to be Wednesday, November 20th at 6 o'clock in this room. And we don't have any executive session tonight, so can I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Rankin, seconded by Mr. Kanzinger. Mrs. Brenda, would you take the roll?
Mrs. Garvey.
Yes.
Mr. Rankin.
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole.
Yes.
Mr. Kinziger.
Yes.
I'm gonna get the award.
23 minutes.
I'm amazed.